Hey everybody, Rob Childs here with another video on the fine art of rapier combat. So unlike in previous videos where I discuss techniques and strategies and tactics that I use and how to perform those, one of the viewers out there had a question regarding the incortata, also known as the girata, and whether or not I use that in my system. If so, how so? And if not, why not? It's a very good question, so I thought I would share that with all of you. Now, Giganti called it incortata, Fabris called it the girata, which means turn, and it is essentially a technique whereby you extend your weapon toward your opponent while simultaneously turning the body out of the way. Now, this has been, as any fencing technique can be said, has been used both well and not so well, depending upon the fencer and how they are employing it. Over the last 30 years, I have seen this performed on various occasions in various situations, including in tournament. In fact, most recently, I saw it in the European Games, conducted in fact by the person who was asking this question. He did a beautiful job of performing the girata against his opponent. His opponent never saw it coming. His opponent at that particular time happened to be charging, and as I will discuss later on in this video, a charging body, the human body in general, is a very slow moving thing on the field. It is very easy to see, and the girata itself, in my experience, has been performed most well when that is performed against a person who is committing to that long-range flèche attack, or that charging attack. Because as I said, the body is a very slow-moving thing, and unlike the rapier blade, the eyes can track that really well. So if your opponent is charging, I have seen on several different occasions the opponent perform the girata, and it has worked very well. No, I do not. And it is not because I don't find it to be an effective technique, because as I've already said, I have seen it with my own eyes used in order to ventilate the opponent rather effectively. But the reason I don't use it is because, as I have mentioned earlier, the body is a very slow moving thing, at least in relation to the rapier blade. And when it comes to the attacks, tells are emanating from the body. It's almost like its own language. And because the body is so slow, whenever my opponent has attempted to void out of the way, and I've had plenty of opponents who have attempted the girata itself against me, I have never found it difficult to simply redirect my point against that opponent when they have attempted to perform the girata against me. Now, admittedly, this may very well be because, as I had mentioned, the girata can be, like any other fencing technique, used well and used not so well. It can be used at the wrong time. And for someone like myself, I don't typically commit to a flèche attack from long range, precisely because the body is so slow. But every time my opponent has attempted either just simply voiding out of the way, or, since as the subject is, using the girata against me, I have always found it very easy to simply redirect my point against that person who is attempting that technique against me. Now, if I was the kind of person who committed to the flèche, if I was the kind of person who charges a lot, then yes, I would say that that is probably effective because of the fact that I'm going to give a big tell, if even only from the sake of time standpoint. It's going to take me a goodly amount of time to cross that distance, at least talking in fencing tempos. So I do not use it for that reason, because the body is slow and it is not difficult for a high caliber performer to be able to redirect that point against their opponent. The second reason is because I am not comfortable with any move that requires me to turn my back on my opponent. So as you can see from the plate, you have to turn your back to at least some degree. Some may do it more than others, but regardless, turning my body out of the way, it puts my feet at a disadvantage. It puts my body at a different profile that I'm not comfortable with. So therefore, because of that turn, I do not use the girata in my own fencing style. Lastly, the reason I don't use the girata is because of my own martial context. I always try to fence from a martial context. So that means when I'm delivering a blow, I have to be in a position whereby I can defend myself regardless of where that blow has landed. Because let's face it, if you were indeed in the middle of a sword fight, which hopefully you will never find yourself within, but if you were within that sword fight, if you were to strike your opponent, what are the odds that your opponent instantaneously dies and the fight is over? It's probably fairly small unless you happen to hit that off button right through the head. So that being the case, When you strike your opponent, and a great many duels, ended in this fashion, while your weapon is bound up in your opponent's body, your opponent has a bit of time with which to try and take you with them. And when it comes to the Girata, as I said, I'm not comfortable with turning my back towards my opponent. So in the execution of that, it leaves me fairly open for being struck with a riposte or even just simply a follow-on attack by my opponent because he is not yet dead. So for that reason, the Girata turns me out of my comfort zone when it comes to being able to defend myself. But that does not mean you should not experiment with it. Absolutely, because every fencer is different. I highly encourage you to experiment with it. Like I said, it can be effective, but it's up to you to decide that for yourself. So I hope you were able to make use of this information. If you have any questions, by all means, please feel free to reach out to me on Facebook. You can also reach out in the comment section here on the YouTube channel. I look forward to hearing from you and even more so being able to fence with you in a tournament sometime soon.